Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a really big story, a massive 80-page legal complaint where the state of Minnesota is basically accusing the U.S. federal government of an invasion. Yeah, you heard that right.
Okay, so let's start with the line that just jumps off the page. This is the central, and I mean explosive, claim from Minnesota's lawsuit. This one sentence really sets the stage for this huge constitutional battle that's happening right on the streets of Minneapolis and St. Paul.
And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about here, the complaint alleges that we're looking at over 2,000 federal agents deployed to the Twin Cities. Now, to put that into perspective, the lawsuit points out that this is more agents than the entire police forces of both Minneapolis and St. Paul combined. It's a huge number.
So, you're probably wondering, what is this Operation Metro Surge? And why did it lead to such an extreme legal move from the state?
Well, according to the lawsuit, this is not your standard law enforcement action, not even close. It's described as this massive, multi-agency operation from the Department of Homeland Security. We're talking militarized-style raids and arrests happening out in public, which, as you can imagine, is creating a lot of fear in the community.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. We're now getting to the heart of Minnesota's argument, the why. What's the alleged motive behind this whole thing? The lawsuit basically builds a case that this operation isn't really about law enforcement at all. It's about something else entirely.
So you've got two very different stories here. On one hand, the federal government's official reason is that this surge is all about fighting a big fraud case. But on the other hand, Minnesota's lawsuit says, nope, that's just a pretext. They argue it's a cover story for what's really political retaliation against the state's Democratic leaders.
And to back up this claim of political payback, the lawsuit points to what it calls a history of personal animosity from the administration. And just a heads up, the filing includes some pretty direct quotes with offensive language. The argument being made is that this operation is being driven by a personal desire to punish political rivals.
So the complaint then lays out this timeline, and it's pretty crucial to their argument. They're trying to show a pattern here. The idea is that when one attempt to pressure these so-called sanctuary jurisdictions got shut down by the courts, the administration just switched tactics, and Minnesota ended up right in the crosshairs.
But this lawsuit isn't just about political motives. It gets really granular, detailing a whole series of specific incidents and tactics happening on the ground. Tactics that Minnesota claims aren't just aggressive, but are actually illegal.
And wow, the complaint reads like a laundry list of alleged misconduct. It's describing this pattern of what it calls unconstitutional behavior by federal agents. Everything from racial profiling and detaining American citizens to agents hiding their identities with masks and even, get this, swapping the license plates on their cars.
And again, the lawsuit isn't just making these big, broad claims. It gives really specific examples. Like in one incident, you have a team of 4 city public works employees. According to the complaint, agents questioned the 3 non-white employees about their citizenship, but completely ignored their white colleague who was standing right there with them.
Here's another one. There's this detailed account in the filing where a local pastor tries to step in during an arrest. The lawsuit alleges this, quote, is the response he got from a federal agent. And of course, this is being used as more evidence of what they claim is racially motivated enforcement.
And then, things took a really tragic and dramatic turn. The complaint points to the fatal shooting of a Minneapolis resident by an ICE agent. This is presented as a key moment where the whole operation went from being a source of fear and disruption to, well, a matter of life and death.
So the lawsuit argues that the impact of all this goes way beyond just the people who were stopped or arrested. It makes the case that there's been this severe and very measurable impact on the entire community.
For example, look at local businesses, especially in immigrant communities. They've been hit incredibly hard. The lawsuit says they've seen their revenue just plummet. We're talking drops of 50 to 80%, all because customers are reportedly too scared to even leave their homes.
And how about the cost to the city itself? That's the estimated police overtime bill for Minneapolis in just a matter of days. And let's be really clear here. According to the complaint, that money wasn't spent helping the federal agents. It was spent dealing with the public safety fallout that their actions allegedly created. Think about the kids. That's roughly how many students were out of school when Minneapolis public schools just canceled everything. The reason they gave? Safety concerns, right after the shooting and reports of chaotic agent activity happening near a high school.
And these aren't just one-off events. They led to actual policy changes. You have school districts dealing with what they call widespread fear and disruption, having to scramble to create new online learning options for families who just don't feel it's safe to send their kids to school anymore.
So with this whole situation escalating, The state of Minnesota, plus the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, they decided they had to do more than just release statements. They took the fight to federal court with this lawsuit.
Okay, so one of the main legal arguments here goes all the way back to the Constitution, specifically the 10th Amendment. Basically, Minnesota is saying the federal government is way out of its lane. They're arguing that this operation is unlawfully interfering with powers that are supposed to be reserved for the state, the fundamental job of ensuring public health, safety, and education for its own people.
So what is Minnesota actually asking the court to do? Well, this isn't about getting money. They're asking a federal judge for 4 really big things. First, declare the whole operation unconstitutional. Second, issue an injunction to stop it, like right now. And third and fourth, prevent the federal government from trying to force their hand or from singling out Minnesota like this ever again.
At the end of the day, the outcome of this case could be huge, setting a major precedent. It really leaves us all with this massive constitutional question, especially in today's politically divided world. Where do you draw the line between the federal government's job to enforce its laws and a state's right to govern itself and protect its own citizens?